Aloha mai kako e na hoa makamaka mai kala hiki a kala kau velina nui me ke aloha. Mahalo nui no ke ako ana no kako no ka pono o ka hui, no ka pono o ka aina, a no ka pono o ka vai no hoi. Ea he o lelo no e ao e kalele ana I ke koi o ka vai a me ka aina ke kahi. Ola I ka vai aka o pua. There is life in the water from the clouds. Rain gives us life. Aloha, everyone, and thank you for making time for today's February 24th board meeting of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Before beginning today's meeting, I'd like to state that our board is dedicated to providing safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. At this time, we'd like to share a brief recording with reminders on public participation, as well as virtual meeting regulations for board members as required by law.
Materials for this meeting under HRS Section 92-7.5 are accessible at boardofwatersupply.com/board meetings. The public may attend this meeting in person at the BWS Public Service Building, located at 630 South Beretania Street. The public may also view a live stream of today's meeting on our website at boardofwatersupply.com/live. We have been accepting written or oral testimony for today's meeting. Instructions and an online submittal form are available at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. The deadline to submit advanced written testimony has passed. Testimony received by noon today have been distributed to the board members. We will continue to accept written testimony today through our online form. Oral testimony in person or remotely will be accepted during today's meeting. To facilitate as much in-person and remote testimony as reasonably possible during the time allotted, pre-registration and submittal of a written version of testimony at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony is strongly encouraged. To testify in person, please register using our online form or come to the Public Service Building at 630 South Beretania Street. We have a representative in the lobby to provide intake and further instructions. To request to testify remotely, please complete the online form at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. Requesters will receive an email containing links and instructions to join the Zoom session. Testifiers will have 2 minutes to state their position. A timekeeper will alert testifiers when there is 1 minute remaining. Once the 2 minutes are up, please summarize to allow time for questions from the board. Then, make room for the next testifier. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet quorum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at their location during roll call. Meeting participants who are calling or video conferencing in, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you have a question, comment, or wish to enter or second a motion on an action item, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself before continuing to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the Zoom chat to send a direct message to our support team. Their names are listed in the message to all participants. To open the chat window, please click on the text bubble icon on the Zoom toolbar.
All right, thank you. Let's take a moment to take roll call of the board members. When I call your name, please say aye. And if attending remotely, please make the appropriate disclosures. Board member Kehalani Pu'u. Maybe running a few minutes late. Board member Jean Albano.
Hi, I'm in my office alone.
Aloha, Jean. Thank you.
Hello.
In the boardroom with me today is Vice Chair Jonathan Kanashiro.
Here.
Board member Lance Wilhelm.
Yep.
Brian and Daya and Edwin Sniffen may join us later via Zoom. And when we do, we'll mark the time for the notes. Also in the room with us today are Manager Ernie Lau.
Aloha.
Aloha, Ernie. Deputy Manager Erwin Kawata. Aloha. Board Secretary Joy Cruz Achu.
Here.
Aloha. Manager Secretary Kim Kwai. And Information Specialist Wayne Maria. Aloha. Joining us by Zoom are Jeff Lau and Jessica Wong, both from the City and County Corporation Council Department. Aloha. Okay, so we have 2 items for action today. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 27th, 2025. Any discussion or amendments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by John and seconded by Lance. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Jonathan Conachero.
Aye.
Board Member Lance Fulton.
Aye.
Board Member Gina Vano.
Aye.
Chair Nalegu Anthony.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 4 ayes.
Thank you. Please note for the record. Moving on to item number 2, adoption of resolution number 995/2025, acceptance of gifts to the Board of Water Supply from various donors in support of the 2025 Water Conservation Week program. Chair recognizes Kathleen Elliott Pahinui.
Mahalo, Chair, Manager, Board members. We recommend the adoption of the attached resolution number 995/2025 that accepts proposed gifts to the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu in support of the 2025 Water Conservation Week program. Monetary and in-kind gifts and donors total $14,100. Briefly, our donors are Friends of Halava Xeriscape Garden, Sodexo for refreshments for our award ceremony, Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union, Aloha Pacific Federal Credit Union, Alexander and Baldwin, Hawaii Energy, and Pasha Hawaii. This well-established education outreach program is in its 47th year of existence. It uses a poster and poetry contest to engage Oahu students in grades kindergarten through 12 and teaches them the value of water. Our goal is to instill in them the need to be water efficient, as together everyone contributes to a larger island-wide commitment to a sustainable water future. Through this program, the BWS hopes to inspire more island residents to adopt water-saving conservation measures. Mahalo.
Hello. Members, any questions? Kathleen, can you just maybe talk a little bit about how successful this has been in the past and what are some of the positive outcomes that come from this happening year in and year out?
Sure, absolutely. So last year we had almost 50 schools participate for the poster and 11 schools for the poems. And we added the poem contest about 20 some years ago to engage the older children, whereas the poster was geared towards younger children. Last year we had 847 posters submitted and 312 poems. And the value of this is I can't tell you how many people I meet every day who say, oh, my child did this, or I participated. We've even had people, friends and family who've, kids have won the contests at different levels. And one thing we started last year that's been very successful is we're going on the morning TV shows, but we're bringing the teachers and students, some of the winners, with us to engage and explain why they participated and what they learned from it as well. But we find it, people remember it, and everyone loves the calendar. We get a lot of requests for the calendar. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for all the effort in this. I think it helps to just keep these issues relevant as we move on from one generation to the next.
Well, it's a team effort. Everybody works hard on this. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, and the products are beautiful that come out of it.
We think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Just note for the record, Kehao Lani just joined. Aloha Kehao, if you could just make the appropriate disclosures for virtual attendance.
Hi, yes, aloha, everyone. I am present and alone. I'm having some issues with my camera, so I'm trying to get that taken care of. I will turn it on as soon as I figure it out.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for coming on the call. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the adoption of resolution number 995/2025.
So moved.
Thank you, Lance. Is there a second? Thank you, John. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, additions, or amendments? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Jonathan Conachero.
Aye.
Board Member Lance Fulton. Board Member Mani Kuhu.
I
Board Member Gina Vano.
Aye.
Chair Nalegu Anthony.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 5 ayes.
Thank you so much. Please note for the record. Moving on today to items for information. Item number 1, update on the Board of Water Supply's response to potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contamination. Chair recognizes Joyce Lynn. Aloha, Joyce.
Chair, thank you, Chair. I'm Joyce with the Office of Manager and Chief Engineer, providing you the Red Hill update. So this past month, actually past 2 months, it's been a little quiet on Red Hill updates, but early in February, we had an opportunity to present at the Pacific Water Conference to just inform the water industry professionals about some of our ongoing progress with Red Hill and our remediation journey. And then also it's not on this slide, but we just found out last week that the University of Hawaii began their dye tracer study. And the goal of the study is to better understand the groundwater movement in the underground aquifer. So based on the information provided on on the UH's website, it's said that about 50 pounds of this red fluorescent dye was mixed with 5,000 gallons of water from the Navy's Waiawa shaft. It was injected into one of their monitoring wells, number 8, over a 6-day period. And this monitoring well is about a 1/4 mile up gradient from the Red Hill shaft. And during this tracer study period, they're going to be pumping the Red Hill shaft because actually it's been pumping, it's just not for their public water usage. But they've been pumping it at a reduced rate at 1.8 million gallons per day for their GAC treatment before disposing into the lava stream. During this tracer study, they're actually going to increase the pumping rate to 4.2 million gallons per day. And that's to help maximize the recovery of the dye. And at the same time, they'll be monitoring, they'll be sampling and monitoring at various monitoring wells along the facility to also see if they can pick up any of these tracers, just so that they know, kind of see where the groundwater is flowing. There is, if you just Google Red Hill Tracer Study right now, one of the first top pages will be an information page from the UH Manoa. And there is also a YouTube webinar available. It's about a 11-minute video where they go through the whole study itself, some of the methods used, and then as well as the equipment being used. So the monitoring is ongoing right now into the spring of this year, and a report will be publicly available in around summertime of this year. In terms of tank closure updates at the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility, tank 3 and 4 are undergoing ventilation. Tanks 5 and 6 are being prepared for sludge removal and remnant fuel removal. And they're also having structure improvements so that they can, the tanks 5 and 6 can be pressure washed. So far, tanks 7 and 8 have started the pressure washing procedure in January. As of January 24, about 510 gallons of residual fuel and 158 gallons of sludge have been removed from the facility just through the tank cleaning process. So here are some of the legislative bills that the Board of Water Supply is monitoring and tracking in relation to Red Hill. HB 505 or House Bill 505, which is undergoing finance hearing this afternoon, is to establish a Red Hill Water Alliance Initiative or Red Hill Vibe Policy Coordinator within CWORM and a special fund. So far, both the House Bill 505 and its companion, the Senate Bill 150, have passed readings with minor amendments such as the effective date to July 1st, 3000, just to keep it going in the process, and also just technical non-substantial amendments for clarity. So that's going. House Bill 1367 and its companion bill, Senate Bill 1634, proposes appropriation of $20 million in general obligation bonds for the Board of Water Supply to construct up to 6 monitoring wells. Both of these have passed with amendments on the effective date to July 1st, 3000, just to keep the bills going. In the House Bill 1367, the dollar amount was crossed off for final decision by the Finance. And unfortunately, Senate Bill 543 and 656 were not heard, so rendering them dead for this legislative session. And so actually tonight at 5 p.m., the Navy Closure Task Force is hosting a webinar to go over the pressure washing process. That you can actually join the webinar directly from their website, located on the link over there. And there's a little click me link tab that you can just click on, and it will take you directly to a Microsoft Teams session that will start at 5 p.m. And then we also will be attending those following events in the coming months. This concludes my update. I am available for any questions.
Members, any questions?
So quick question on the UH study. So that is just totally independent of the board. We had nothing to do with that.
It's just for information. So yeah, I believe this is a study that the Navy has tasked the UH Manoa to help understand the underground movements of the aquifer. So it's independent. It's not what the Board of Water Supply is doing.
So University of Hawaii received I don't know if it was $20 million
Right.
to help fund the development of an independent groundwater flow model. And I guess this is part of the effort. They're also working closely with the Department of Health on this. So the Navy is doing their own groundwater flow model, and the UH is also doing a groundwater flow model in collaboration with the Department of Health. So let's see what they come out with. The tracer study, we were not aware until it became public. Actually, we did receive a phone call the other week. But other than that, we haven't been consulted on the tracer study.
Should we be consulted? Do we not?
Yeah, it would have been nice because I think what the dye they're using is red. So I don't know, what it'll look like if, say, some of it came up in our wells. I think that's probably low probability of that happening, but it would have been nice to actually have a little bit of more heads up from UH, because we know that we'll be called and ask questions. At this point, we can only refer them to the University of Hawaii to respond to any questions they might have on the study. It's probably a good thing to try to figure out how water flows in that under the fuel tanks in what directions, because it's a very complicated underground geology. The volcanic geology is very complex with lava tubes, clinker zones. It's not uniform, what they call uniform or homogeneous situation underground. Really diverse.
But if there's anything the board can do to help improve the nature of that relationship, it just seems like it's one system. It's foolish to pretend like it's not. And so we should all find a way to work better together.
Yeah, I think improved communication is probably an easy first step. That way we can help get information out to the community if they when they ask us. So like at the CRI meeting, it's coming up on Thursday night, the Community Representation Initiative. They're holding their own meeting. The EPA won't be there, I think, and the Navy won't be there, but this community group continues to hold regular meetings to try to get information out, continue the ongoing discussion about Red Hill and cleanup and other things.
The independence of the study seems important. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the work.
One point I want to point out is that the funding for the study actually is coming from the Navy.
Mhm.
So it is funded by the military, but the military tells us, the Navy tells us they're not involved in how that study is conducted.
I'm assuming the red dye has no negative effects to drink.
I don't know that, well, all I can do is read their press release right now.
Okay.
All the more reason for better communication, right? I mean, that's a simple question that should be
Yeah,
relatively easy to answer.
yeah, I mean, and they should probably be an FAQ if they're pumping it into a drinking water aquifer.
Yeah.
States it is a glutamine WT is the tracer name, and it is non-toxic and is approved by EPA and Hawaii Department of Health for use.
Vern, are you familiar with that? Yeah, I think Chair's question is something that the average person in the community might ask, and or all we can do at this point is refer them to the University of Hawaii and the Department of Health.
Okay.
Have we done one of these before? That's tried to trace across valley or anything larger than just what's happening on the Navy property?
I think tracer studies have been used in the past. I'm not familiar with any other efforts to use tracer studies.
In the 11-minute YouTube webinar, it does discuss past tracer studies that were done. Actually, I think it was Lahaina was done. There was a trace study that was done in Lahaina, and then also different fuel tank facilities on Oahu have also undergone that tracer study.
I'm assuming like, maybe this is one for Owen, but I'm assuming you can like test for this thing. It's gonna ping in a test. You don't gotta look for something red as you pump.
It turns color or not. You have to light it up. And then
Oh, like the,
It fluoresces.
fluoresces.
okay. I mean, I'm wondering if, we don't wanna like measure for it in our own wells anyway.
Right. Yeah, we'll reach out to the investigator at the University of Hawaii. They identified them in the press release, and we're familiar with at least one of them, and asked them for more information on the substance. So that we'll be able to see it. I don't know if we'll be able to find it in our wells, but again, I want to be careful because I've been accused of spreading misinformation.
Yeah. Well, our interest is not to interfere, right?
No, but
But you introduced something into the water system. It's a
50
system over which we have some kuleana.
yeah,
So-
it's a resource that we also use, so.
Yeah. So I don't think asking a few questions and is too much.
Oh,
To ask.
we'll be sure to reach out to the University of Hawaii.
Well, and I think this is also just like I mean, we have been chipping away at this question about what is the relationship between all of these wells in this aquifer that sits in between the two ends of these valleys for years now. I mean, before even the spill, and to get more data on that, not just the hypothetical modeling, but actual data of you know, tracer moving between the two. I would think that you would actually want to know what's hitting our wells as well.
At a minimum, we want to be super interested consumers of the information, right? At a minimum.
Yeah,
We also participate in something called the Remediation Roundtable. That's was created by the EPA and the Department of Health.
right.
And was actually put together to be more collaborative and to have various stakeholders that are interested in groundwater flow studies, how to clean up the contamination in the environment, how to remediate it. It would have been, hindsight is always 2020, but maybe it would have been a good idea to actually have the University of Hawaii share with us at the remediation roundtable meeting before they actually go out and implement, so that we can provide our mana'o into the process, and maybe, ask the simple questions like, is this substance safe?
I'm sorry, I missed a meeting last week, but that did not occur.
It was postponed.
Oh,
We don't know, and it's gonna be rescheduled till, but it was postponed. But going forward, again, I don't want to spread misinformation because people criticize me for that. That I think being transparent and upfront with the community is a good thing before you actually implement. That would have been my suggestion.
Do you know who the lead is on the study at UH? The lead on the study at UH?
Dr. Tomas, correct?
And Dr. Don Thomas. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we know both of them.
Yeah, maybe we can just ask.
I will send I'll send Don an email and ask him for more
Just
information.
sure that it's not a FOIA and just like a,
Yeah, it's not a 92F
yeah,
FOIA request.
okay,
It's a simple email question.
okay, awesome. Members, any other questions? Joyce, thank you so much, and looking forward to hearing more in the summer about what they find. Thank you.
You.
Yeah.
Um,
Choice.
before I move on, do we have any testimony under, I think we have two, yeah, for item number one? Yeah. So why don't, is Meredith on the line?
No, we were not controlled.
It's just written.
Yeah.
Okay, and staff had a, Meredith's is a little shorter. I just want to take Meredith's first because it's shorter. Meredith wrote in and asked a couple of questions. And I just wanted to read, it's short enough. I'm just going to read it into the, for the meeting notes. This is from Meredith Wilson. Aloha, I appreciate Ernie's highlighting the Navy's updated groundwater flow model report at last month's Community Representation Initiative, or CRI meeting. I was unaware this was new as of September 26th of last year. We should not have to, quote, happen upon, end quote, these important documents. The DOD, EPA, and DOH could very much improve the release of new documentation for the public regarding Red Hill. Couple of questions. Does BWS intend to provide comment on these new models, and has there been any response from EPA or DOH? It's important to note that there is still not a regulatory agency approved model after originally being required a decade ago as part of the 2015 AOC. On another topic, I've heard from the Navy and BWS that acquiring sites for new monitoring wells can be challenging in that some are located on private property, need to go through lengthy processes for permitting, my words. Is there any incentive or way the community can encourage homeowners to agree to these projects? Mahalo to you all for continuing to safeguard Oahu's water and furthermore the people that depend on it for life. Meredith Wilson. So I wanted to bring to light the question around modeling for the groundwater flow model.
Yeah, in response to Meredith's first question, we're still reviewing the groundwater flow model that came out in September of last year. The initial version of that model report, and we only have access to the report, was so heavily redacted, it was almost unintelligible. But since then, the Navy, I think, released a less redacted version, hopefully at the encouragement of the EPA. So we are reviewing, and I don't believe, really, we haven't submitted formal comments yet on this. 12,000.
So we're doing that.
12,000?
12,000.
Pages. It'll take us a little while to get through that. On the second question, it is challenging. I'm not aware of any real incentives. I think one of the challenges that was discussed by a potential landowner with the regulators, the EPA and Department of Health, was the issue of liability to the landowner. If a monitoring well drilled on their property were to detect petroleum contamination, would the landowner, at no fault of its own, now have some share of liability?
Okay.
So we'll continue to press on that in discussions, maybe with the remediation roundtable group, and see if there's any progress there. Perhaps some efforts in Congress could help provide an exemption to homeowners under these circumstances.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions or comments? Okay. Chair recognizes Susan, we call it Davis. Susan, thank you for your,
31 pages. It's not 12,000.
I was gonna say robust documentation here. I wanted to encourage you, we talked a little bit before the meeting, but I want to encourage you to get to the ending slides as well. Those are important. And I think staff's gonna drive. No, we're just gonna talk it through. How are we doing this?
I think, yes, Susan, you can go ahead and just kind of talk through it.
Yeah, I'll talk you through it.
Yeah.
The reason I put this together was I did not know that the December meeting was a week earlier. So I didn't make the meeting where it was being discussed, and I replayed it, and I noticed that board member Andrade and Albano had some questions about the whole meeting. And I'm not going to go through everything, and some of the pages have numbers because I had a screenshot from the Navy's presentation. So here's disclaimer, my own opinion. I'm not being coerced. If they want to call it misinformation, fine. Just don't put it in the newspaper again. Navy addresses claims from BWS regarding the swarm team tech memo. That was the purpose of this meeting. The second purpose was to propagandize the BWS claims. All through the meeting, they portrayed the BWS did not have all the data. Therefore, BWS meetings are spreading misinformation to include Dr. Winkler. The Navy provided this missing information data after this meeting, and it had 164 pages of data that does not discredit the Board of Water Supply or Dr. Winkler's findings. Dr. Winkler maintained an unbiased view of the data, as does the Board of Water Supply. Additional data doesn't support the swarm team findings. And then I'm not going to read this, but you're going to have to just follow what I did. So when you see the pages that look like they're snapshots, that's what they are. And what they did was they took 8 selective issues. There weren't just 8 issues, but they took them point by point. So if you can find the page where it says 10, maybe. It says that the EPA, the BWS says the existing data was found to be very suspect and thus would be qualified as unusable for the purpose of proving the absence of TPH in the drinking water. So the first place we get kicked is that they're saying they weren't trying to prove the absence of the contaminant because there's no way to detect zero. They just wanted to to demonstrate that the water is safe and that the EPA and Department of Health generally agree. There's no definition for generally agree that the low-level TPH detections were not associated with JP5 fuel. Now, they continuously use the term low-level, and as I've presented to you, every data point that I pulled was from their website. It was raw data, and everything was not below 50. So they're still carrying on that nonsense. Now, this is the good one on under point 1 and point 2. It's the second page. It says the LTM sampling plan was developed by the IDWST, which purposely, deliberately decided that quenching with sodium thiosulfate was not necessary for the method 8015 samples collected under the program. But if we go back to the FTAC, they were using the non-quenching as the reason why the detections came up as they were. So there's a lot of changing their minds in the presentation. However, during the presentation, there was never allocated a time for Dr. Winkler, Ernie, or the chair to interject anything. They had to wait to the very end to ask questions. And when they tried, they were shut down. There's another page 12 that says this SW 846 lists suggestions, not requirements. So now basically they're trying to get out of using the sample no, that's not, that is the requirement, SW 846. Talking about the preservation and holding time and that it's intended only for guidance. Well, you can see how they're backpedaling. At one point, they say that the TPH concentrations and that unquenched samples may be slightly biased high. Slightly is a word that I would use if the finding was 50 parts per billion. Slightly would be 55, 60, not 256. I'm going past the spike study because
Thank you.
I was already getting. Now I'm trying to get to the end, okay?
Okay.
The rest of it is information for those of you that didn't get to see the presentation, to just how they tried to destroy anything that the Board of Water Supply and the subject matter experts were presenting to cause their misinformation. Okay, I want to get past that clipping. There's a lot in there about clipping also, where they try and discredit. That's the word, you know, discredit. Discredit, discredit, discredit. Towards the end of this, I don't know if anybody noticed during the presentation, but which the presentation was supposed to be about long-term monitoring and the findings there. That was the tech memo. The EDWM did not start back at FTAC when the tech memo was presented. Now they start to mix in EDWM inside their slides, which that wasn't what this was about, okay? So it's just pointing out where they're trying to confuse the points, the relevant points. And getting back to, I'm trying to get there, okay? So I reviewed myself the 164 pages of additional data that was not provided in the original tech memo, of which the Navy kept saying, because you didn't have all the extra data, that is why you came to the conclusions that you did. 164 pages of crap. It did not do anything to change that there were only low levels of TPH during LTM. I know that because I was talking about the data throughout the whole time. So let's see. The question, do I believe that there's only low levels of TPH? No. The additional 164 pages of stuff did not influence my take on the tech memo. Navy floods us with meaningless data, 164 pages or 12,000 that just blew my mind, to misdirect the public and confuse the issue. The Navy still proclaims that there were no detections of JP5 fuel. We're talking about total petroleum hydrocarbons. The JP5 fuel was already diluted by the time December and January came. What we were finding, what they were presenting, was total petroleum hydrocarbons. But here's another way of manipulating words to confuse. The Navy's December 10 meeting did not prove that LTM samples revealed only low levels. I stand on all of my testimonies and I provided data throughout this time. And my last page is, can the public rely on the extended drinking water monitoring? And I say, not really. And it ends next month. And I've looked at the data and I don't believe what I'm seeing, but that's okay. I don't have to believe it. The rest of the public has to believe it. And I ask, if it's so safe, why do we have a GAC tank farm now? Why did we have to build a whole tank GAC farm if they said that the water was safe? No, that's their way of trying to fix stuff. Oh, any questions? I'm sorry, I got on a
If there's any questions?
roll.
I don't disagree with you, Susan, about the GAC, and that meeting went horrendously long and gave us like a 10 or 12-minute window to reply, which was, I think, the intent of how that all laid out. So,
But you guys left and it went on and on and on. So
well,
how can you communicate with an organization that doesn't want to be honest and transparent? How do you do that? How do you communicate with an organization that tries to discredit subject matter experts because we didn't have all the data? And as Ernie said, well, why didn't we have all the data? Why didn't you just give us all the data? And then when they did, it was meaningless. But what it did was it threw off any kind of meaningful dialogue with Dr. Winkler and the team and you all, because all we were hearing is, you didn't have all the data. That's why you came up with these speculations.
great.
And I'm back.
Thanks for your time today, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else here who wishes to submit testimony on item number 1, update of the Board of Water Supply's response to the potential impacts of Red Hill? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to item number 2, Capital Improvements Program Semi-Annual Update. Chair recognizes Patrick Chun.
Good afternoon, Chair Nahalehu and board members. I am Patrick Chun, the Acting Program Administrator for Capital Projects Division, and I'll be presenting information on how the FY25 CIP budget was executed in the first and second quarters. The first table shows the contracts awarded through the first 2 quarters of FY25, broken down by design and construction contracts. There were no land purchases. The last column indicates the budget amounts for these line items. For the first two quarters, approximately 11.5 million was awarded compared to the 279.5 million budgeted for the entire FY25. The second table shows contracts completed, again broken down by design and construction contracts. The total amount for completed contracts was approximately 17.4 million. Third table shows there were a total of 321 ongoing design projects with a total value of 163 million and a total of 120 ongoing construction projects with a total of 532 million. On this slide, the top table shows the construction projects awarded in the first quarter, the budgeted amounts, and the contract award amount. There were no design contracts awarded in the first quarter. The 3 projects listed do not show a budget amount. I'm sorry. They do show a budget amount. These are work orders for a pump renewal and replacement line item that had a budget of approximately 5 million. The individual work orders are based on requests from our Water System Operations Division, and these construction projects are implemented through an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or IDIQ contract. The total for the first quarter is approximately 1 million awarded out of 5 million budgeted for pump renewal and replacement work. The second table shows the design and construction projects completed, including completion date and contract amount. The total for the completed projects in the first quarter of FY25 is approximately 15.9 million. On this slide, the table on the top shows the design and construction projects awarded in the second quarter of FY25. including budgeted amounts and awarded amounts. The total awarded amount is approximately 10.5 million compared to the 10.5 million budgeted amount. Second table indicates design and construction projects completed, including completion date and contract amount. The total amount of completed construction projects in the second quarter was approximately 1.5 million. This slide shows the percent in red of the FY25 CIP budget executed at the first and second quarters compared to previous years. At the end of the second quarter of FY25, approximately 11.5 million or 4% of the 279.5 million budgeted amount for new CIP contracts were executed. That's the presentation. Any questions?
Any questions?
Can I ask a question? Go back to like the first slide that had it does look on this last slide too with the graphs, that's like normal, but the amount of spend in the first two quarters relative to your budget is like super small, like 11 million against 279. So is there any chance they actually do 279? It just seems like the budget, like if you do 11 million on 279 in the first two quarters, the last two quarters, you're gonna be super busy.
That's right. That's the way it typically is.
And that's the way it tends to be. Like, is there a reason why it's like? Because so I used to be on the other side of the equation, right? So I was on the contractor side trying to bid all the jobs in the last half.
We try to encumber sooner, but doesn't always work out. But that's the typical pattern.
I think I think the result of that is you get so much work to do in a shorter period of time. And the contracting community has a harder time to respond to that, right? Because there's so much work to bid in a smaller window of time.
Yeah, Pat, just jump into, so what you see is,
The real hockey stick.
yeah, I mean, it is a hockey stick, except the gray line, which was 2024. So that one actually became a more straight line, more reasonable.
I think it's a way to, I mean, I've actually never seen it presented this way, but you get, I think, better economies if you could find a way to like level that off, right? Because you get better responsiveness from the contractors, I would think.
Yeah, and the hockey stick is actually, I think, a board member, Sniffen, also pointed out that even DOT is more like a hockey stick, where the last quarters are where it gets busy. And having,
It's all the state agencies bidding where it's, I know, I used to do it.
yeah, you know,
Right, so there's like 2 weeks where it's like miserably busy.
especially the
Contractors.
fourth quarter
Yeah.
is where everybody's rushing to get it.
And so there are jobs that just don't get bid on, as a result, unfortunately.
So what we're probably gonna come to the board with a proposal for next fiscal year for the CIP. Right now, our CIP is 12 months, it's good for 1 year only. To actually go now and see if the CIP appropriations are actually good for 24 months. To allow a more reasonable approach to trying to get the work out.
So don't like one longer hockey stick, okay, if we do that one.
And unfortunately, that might be true too.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would be worse. You want 2 years worth of budget to happen.
But it takes a lot of effort to actually finish your design, get the design package together, get all your contract documents to go through your solicitation, which we put it out. How long do we put our bids out for? 30 days or? Yeah, so you're giving the contractors, enough time to respond. So that actually now pushes you out to the second quarter. So the first quarter stuff might not, you might not have a lot of activity on an annual budgeting process to actually get stuff out in the first quarter. 2024 was a little different. We actually had to delay or cancel the bids for a few projects for good reason. So my recommendation to our team was to be sure to get it out in the first or second quarter.
I see.
Which you see what happened there is actually now the less of a hockey stick effect.
Yeah.
And hopefully get better pricing.
The reason for it appearing to be better because last year, in the second quarter, there was a $60 million encumbrance for the Kalai Law.
The desal
And
project.
without that, it would have been very similar to
Mhm.
this year's.
I'm curious, how much of the vacancies across all divisions kind of help to make the hockey stick?
I'm sure that if we had more vacancies, better.
Okay.
How many engineers are you short right now, Pat?
Oh, about 10 or so.
I gotta imagine it's reflective in the pricing that you get, like to force that much work in that short a window.
Yeah, sometimes I would say generally it's probably true. One particular project where we actually rebid it didn't come down substantially. It's I think some well drilling projects, onshore well drilling project. It just could also be a relationship number of qualified contractors to the demand for that type of.
Yeah, well driven is quite specialized compared to.
C-57 specialty license.
Right, pretty easy to do.
And maybe this is a little unfair to ask because this is not the date range that you're reporting on, but I'm just wondering, like, looking ahead, all of the federal, I'll use the word kerfuffle going on right now. Do you folks anticipate any of the loan dollars, grant dollars, anything coming down from the federal side, kind of throwing a wrench in the later quarters and being able to actually get that money out the door if you're knocking on the federal door to get the money and no one's there?
At this point, I gotta say, I don't know what the future might hold. It's highly uncertain times that we're in right now. We're operating as if the federal funds are going to come, because I think until it actually happens, we can't assume. But if it does become necessary to say, fund certain projects that we want to keep moving through other sources of non-federal sources of funds, if necessary, we'll come back to the board to amend the CIP.
Okay.
But at this point, we're continuing to move forward. There was some concerns about WIFIA, the EPA, WIFIA loans, which are minimum $20 million loans or higher. You know, we're in the process of applying for one. We haven't executed yet. We had thought that that would have been held up, but I just got a couple press releases from the EPA, released by the EPA, notifying everybody about the awards of two WIFIA loans executed for two different states just recently. So I thought that was hopeful that that program will continue.
What would our exposure be to federal, state, overall CIP budget?
Right now, Raymond, we've got about 100 million in our current budget. Based on federal funds, low interest loans being the majority. So
We're hearing that the loans are not subject of all of this, and it's more the grants. That, you know, loans are relatively low cost to the feds because, you know, I mean, obviously the exposure to them, but we gotta pay it back, right? So.
yeah, I hope you know, the state revolving fund, which is a combination of EPA funds every year and also state funds, that'll continue because that is low interest loans to help utilities, small and large, all over the country deal with their infrastructure problems. So all over the country, everybody benefits from that SRF program, which I hope will continue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay, moving on to item number 3, financial update for the quarter ended in December 31st, 2024. Chair recognizes Leanne Matsumoto. Hello, Leanne.
Good afternoon, board chair, members.
Well, this is our new waterworks controller.
Oh, aloha. Oh, I was gonna say, I think I've seen you here before.
So Kaliko did a great job doing the stepping in the interim, but we're happy to have Leanne back with us. She used to work with us before, and welcome back, Leanne.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. I will be going over the financial performance from July 2024 to December 2024. First slide, here's a comparison of our budget versus actual for the revenues and operating costs. Revenue of 165.3 million is over the budgeted revenue of 9.8 million. It's also 24.8 million over the same time last year. Operating costs of 125.4 million is under budget by 10.4 million. But operating costs are up 7.8 million compared to the same time last year. Therefore, the net revenue of 39.9 million is over budget by 20.2 million. Here are the cost drivers compared on a budget versus actual. We have personnel costs are 5.4 million under budget. Last year, the same time, personnel costs was 1.2 million over the budget. Material services and supplies are under budget by 3.5 million. Equipment is 2.4 million under budget. The debt service is under budget by 700,000. It's up 1.8 million from the same time last year. And utilities are under budget by 3.7 million. The next slide is a cost variance slide from the Executive Support Office. It's just going over the main divisions that make up the 10.4 variance. Going on to the pie chart, this is showing the cost categories as a percentage of total operating costs. So if you look on the bottom right is the material, supplies, and services, which is the largest cost category at 35%. Next is the fixed charges at 30%, personnel services at 19%, and the debt service at 16%. Next slide is a more visual effect on how our current expenses are compared to the budget, categorized by cost drivers. Personnel costs is under budget by 18%. Material supplies and services under budget 7.4%. Equipment is under budget by 92.3%. Debt service is under budget by 18.6%. And fixed costs is over budget by 4.7%. So fixed costs includes utilities, case fees, ERS contributions. This shows our operating costs on both a monthly and year-to-date basis. The bar charts are the monthlies, and then the line graph is a cumulative year-to-date costs. So year-to-date, our operating costs are under budget by 10.4 million or 7.7%. And our last slide is a summary of the revenue on both a monthly and year-to-date basis. Revenues are 9.8 million or 6.28 higher than the budget. That concludes my presentation. Does anybody have questions?
Was there any questions?
I have a question. I know you guys kept your operating costs pretty strict last year for the budget, so it was already pretty tight. And how do you guys just labor or what's the cause?
I can't even get the pen that I wanted to sign these papers. It's that tight. I gotta use the other pen. Okay. I'll make do.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask Reyes to come up and put that a response to the question.
Not a complaint.
So
They're a tough time, so just,
I think on the first to second quarter variances with what you're looking at, a lot of it is timing. So it's not that we're anticipated, like you saw the equipment one, right? It's like we hardly spent anything, but we had budgeted some. So it's not that we will not spend that money by year end. There's just a lot of timing of encumbrance differences. So you'll probably see that catch up in the third and then the fourth. And yes, we do plan to make use of every dollar that you appropriated. Thank you. The budgets are tight, but we do have plans to spend all of it if we can. But yes, like the personnel variance that you're seeing, that kind of stuff, I don't think we can go back and spend, right? That's a function of our vacancies right now. We've worked as hard as we can to fill them. And we asked before when we came to with the budgets in last May, right? we were asking for full funding with the hope that we would fill all of our positions. And the staff, everyone here is working towards that, but we haven't,
Yeah.
made a dent on the personnel side. But yeah, the rest of it, I'd say equipment, material supplies and services, it's more timing than anything. We still intend to buy everything that we put in the budget.
Also gonna catch up.
Yep, there'll probably be the catch-up, yep, more of that hockey stick. Pressure on my procurement staff and pressure on all of us to get our budgets executed and do the things that we had put in for FY 25.
Any other questions?
It is challenging.
Yeah, Leanne, great to meet you and thank you for your time today. Aloha.
Thank you, Leanne.
Moving on to item number 4, financial statements and supplementary information with independent auditors report fiscal year ended in June 30, 2024. Chair recognizes Don Nakamura and Josh Yee from Acuity. Thank you for the abundance of night reading.
Helps with your sleeping, huh? Thank you very much for having us. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and board members. I am Don Nakamura. I am a partner with Acuity LLP, and with me is Joshua Yee, Senior Manager with Acuity. He joined the audit team this year, taking over from Matthew Oda, who the tall guy who used to come. He was too tall, so. But yes, Josh took over as the engagement manager. And yes, thank you for allowing us to perform the audit of the Board of Water Supply again for fiscal year 2024. So we are going back in time, covering the fiscal year 2024 period. So just the scope of our services, I'm not going to read through it, but again, we did perform an audit of the financial statements as well as an audit of the compliance of the board's expenditures of federal awards and tested a major program related to that. And financial statement highlights, Josh.
Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you guys for your time today. So we just want to cover a few financial statement highlights. To start, net position increased by 89.5 million compared to 46 million in 2023. The $43.5 million increase year over year was due to a $15.4 million increase in operating revenue, a $7.8 million increase in interest income, an $18.5 million increase in fair value of investments, and a $9 million increase in federal grant revenue. This was offset by $3.3 million increase in transmission and distribution expenses and $3.6 million increase in maintenance expenses. So moving on to the balance sheet, unrestricted assets was 349 million, which exceeded current liabilities by 213.7 million. Net capital assets was 1.4 billion compared to 1.37 billion, which represented a $67.1 million increase year over year. For the liabilities, notes payable was 124 million, which was a $5.7 million decrease from 2023. Net pension liability increased by 7.4 million to 128.6 million. Net OPEB liability was 28.7 million, which was a $2.2 million decrease from the previous year. And refundable advances was 43.1 million, which represented a $17.8 million increase from the previous year.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So those are just highlights of the financial statements, the audited financial statements. And within the audited financial statements, there is a section called management's discussion and analysis. So that's actually like a summary of the overall audited financial statements with the financial statements and the more detailed notes to the financial statements following that. But yeah, if you have a chance, I'd encourage you folks to take a look at least at the management's discussion and analysis, which is again a summary. Excuse me. In addition to that, we did also perform an audit of the compliance of federal awards, as I mentioned, and just to highlight that, sorry, it's not in the slides, it's in the other report, just highlighting that again, that there was a clean opinion on the financial statements as well as that audit of federal awards. So no findings noted there. Just wanted to highlight that. But coming back to the presentation, the rest of the presentation is required communications under auditing standards, professional auditing standards. And so these are communications we're required to make to those charged with governance. So in this case, the board. And I'm not going to read through everything, but it's a similar presentation as we have had in the past as far as the formatting with the required matter to be communicated in the left column and our response in the right. And since you folks actually all have this ahead of time, I actually will not go through a lot of them, just noting that there wasn't really anything to report, no significant issues or errors that were noted, that sort of thing. So it was a clean audit. And so actually we did complete our audit back in November. But everything, and confirming our independence. Exams. Questions?
Members, any questions?
Just want to thank you. Thank you for your hard work and thank the finance. All the hard work that goes into supporting the audit every year.
Yeah, thank you all for your work. Appreciate it. Okay. Moving on to item number 5. Petition for the designation of the Waianae sector as a groundwater management area. Chair recognizes Barry Usagawa and Jonathan Scheuer. Hello, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Good afternoon. Thank you for the request for a briefing on this petition that we just submitted. We presented this petition back in to the board in 2021 when we were first compiling it. So this is for the designation of groundwater management area for Waianae for the entire aquifer sector. In 2021, we proposed in response to request from the board, we contracted Kahalavai, Dr. Jonathan Scheuer, and put together a petition that was just submitted in January. So today we're going to be talking about what is being proposed, what is designation, why designation is needed, what happens when and if CRM approves the designation, and then some of the outreach activities we did. So we prepared this petition because we wanted to increase the protection and management of groundwater resources equal to the rest of Oahu's aquifers. So this is just groundwater only and for the entire sector. So this is what you see here in blue are the areas that are designated in the state for groundwater. What's in crosshatched is the surface water designations that were approved by the commission. Things to note here, most of the state is not designated in gray. And my simple understanding of that is there is sufficient waters there and the use is lower. So it's not designated. To designate them, pumpage starts to increase towards the sustainable yields, or there's like 7 criteria that triggers designation. And so in the blue and gray hatch are those areas. Prior to the water code in 1987, the North Shore, the Central Oahu, and Honolulu aquifers were groundwater control areas. And then when the code was adopted, they became designated through the adoption. And then Windward was adopted in 1992. I do remember that. And so you can see that Waianae is the only area that is not designated. And we want to bring that aquifer sector up to the same level of management as the rest of the Oahu. So we prepared this petition with the idea of being as comprehensive as possible because of the limited, the amount of work that the Water Commission is doing and their limited staffing. So we compiled as a comprehensive petition that includes the hydrogeological science, the research, the history of water in Waianae, the analysis of the criteria, the talked about some uncertainties and contingencies depending on which option is taken there, and the outreach. So as hopefully that they could use this for their compiling their reports and their findings of fact, and their community outreach could utilize what we did. So this is the map of the aquifers on Oahu. And so when I say the sector, we're talking about Keao, Makaha, Waianae, Ludolei, and Nanakuli. Our sources are only in Makaha and Waianae, but there are some sources, military and Ludolei, but because of the criteria and the effects of climate change, we're asking for the entire sector to be designated, but just groundwater only. The Water Commission could consider groundwater to surface water interactions and maybe even designate for surface water, but those discussions will happen as we go through this. So what is designation? It provides a higher level of regulation of groundwater uses due to potential over extraction or degradation of water resources, requiring water use permits approved by the commission that limit the withdrawals to reasonable and beneficial uses that are in the public interest. And it's taken from their code from the Water Code 174C41, where the commission can designate for the purpose of establishing administrative control over the withdrawals of groundwater and surface water. So permits in non-designated and designated areas. So in a non-designated area, the only two permits that are required are well construction and pump installation permits. Here, a landowner can drill a well, get a permit to construct it and put a pump in it, but they don't have to declare water use. In a designated area, the water use permit is added on. And the permits have a public notice and pretty involved process requirements. So what is this? Designation provides a scientific policy and legal analysis in a formal public process to protect and manage the Waianae's resources, and in the context of competing public trust and non-public trust uses of water. So as an example, availability for affordable housing and Department of Hawaiian Homelands and Agriculture versus restoration of streams and habitat and protecting traditional customary practices. And of course, forest management to protect the supply and whether, I guess, the recharge areas in Waianae. And in that competition, we expect that water conservation and reuse to reduce freshwater use to come to the fore. It's going to be very important to try to reduce the amount of use. And what's complicating it is also that the Water Commission is in the process of revising the sustainable yields because climate change is reducing rainfall in the area. And ultimately, that may result in a reduction in sustainable yields. Now, if they reduce it to a certain level, a slight reduction, we may be able to accommodate that. But if they go too low, then it could create a water shortage. So it's important to understand how much and they intend to do to decrease them. The general understanding is that it will be some decrease in the Waianae area. Ultimately, we're trying to balance water resource protection, management, and use around watershed health. So the Waianae sector, again, the reasons why we want the designation is that the Waianae aquifer itself, where the production has reached the 90% designation criteria. So there's I think it's 7 criteria. Any one of the criteria if met could trigger designation, but we've identified several. So the pumpage in Waianae is one. Climate change causing decreasing rainfall trends, affecting groundwater levels. So we've seen some reduction in groundwater levels in our monitor wells in Makaha. Certainly stream flows are affected despite production levels, which we try to keep our production levels below the sustainable yields. We know that increasing temperatures drive up water demand because as evapotranspiration rates increase, you got to water the plants more, basically. And there's potential water quality degradation from the military land use, such as in Makua with the live fire training area. We know that that involves lead and arsenic and RDX as a propellant. And then on the ground, it could migrate into the groundwater, which would make any groundwater development in Mocoa not available. Yeah. And then also in our outreach, we want to be responsive to the Waianae communities advocating for designation. So the designation will serve to provide more clarity on the regulatory requirements for resource management and any infrastructure needs to address climate change impacts and resilience. These are the 8 criteria, that are listed in the in 174C. The 4 that are in bold are the ones that we've identified and have evaluated in the petition in a lot of detail. Yeah, the 90% criteria being reached, the actual threat in water quality degradation, where the regulation is necessary to preserve diminishing groundwater supplies, and then the serious disputes. The other 4, in terms of like rising chlorides or saltwater intrusion, we're not seeing that in our sources. Largely, I think because we cut back on our pumping. But these 4, and as I said before, any one of these criteria could trigger designation. Yeah.
You don't even know anyone can do it.
This is the projection. So I just want to highlight Waianae in the 90 percentile of the over 90% of the sustainable yield has been pumped in the various years from 2004 to 2024. In the Makaha area we got as high as 89%, and then we dropped it because of change in operations. But and in the other areas, the pumpages are not close to the sustainable yield. But those are the 2 that we're focusing on, Makaha and Waianae. And it's such a rainfall. So a map on the iso-height graph, there's lines of equal rainfall in the 1970s. In Ka'ala was at 100 inches annually. In the 2011 rainfall atlas from the University of Hawaii, it showed it at 65%. So during that time frame, we know that rainfall has decreased and demand has increased. So it puts more emphasis on conservation. And you've seen this before. These are the 2 forecasts to 2100, where the statistical is the dry. I call it the dry scenario, and the dynamical is the wet scenario. But even in the both are showing drying trends in the leeward Oahu. And so what we did there was we had a consultant use those rainfall scenarios and plugged it into the robust analytical model, sustainable yield model, and come up with a low and high sustainable yield. So it's quite small to see, but Makaha sustainable yield is 3, and in a low, it could go down to 1. I think Waianae is 3. In the high, it could be 4, but it could go down to 1. So if we go down into those, if it gets in the so the total sustainable yield for Waianae is 13. We expect that to go down. But if you remember the slide where we had the pumpages, we're in the 2, about the 2 million gallon range. So depending on how low they go, it could affect our system operations and our ability to provide water to the community. This is one of the monitor wells that are in the very back of Makaha that shows a decreasing trend in head level from when we started back in 2007 or 6, decreasing down. But then because of this, we adjusted our operations, and in 2017, started to plateau, and then it started to rise a little. So that's a good sign. But, we did lose a lot of that, the dike levels, a lot of those did decrease by that much. The good news is that we can import water into Waianae. We are importing over half of Waianae's demand. That places more emphasis on us developing new per harbor sources. We have a number that are in design, but awaiting permits from the Water Commission to drill the wells, as well as dealing with Historic Preservation Division requirements. So we're pumping about 4.3 now in Waianae. so depending on how the sustainable yields decrease, if it goes, if we have to pump less than 4, then we need to make it up with import. And so I wanted to talk about implications to border water supply from climate changes. So the sources in Macau and Waianae require reduction into sustainable yields are decreased. As I'm talking about that, more than half of Waianae's drinking water is imported. Talked about that. We don't have the ability to boost water up into Waianae Valley, and it is difficult for us to get water from, all the way to Makaha in the low service transmission system. So that depending on the adjustments, there may require some transmission and booster pumps, mostly booster pump improvement projects to make up for that adjustment. And increasing import into Waianae. Yeah, so I talked about the sources that we're working on in Pearl Harbor. There is that, so we're just trying to ensure that we avoid water shortage situations. So what happens if the Water Commission approves designation? So all water users that have wells, and the large water users are BWS military, there's some agriculture and the Macau East Golf Course will have to apply for water use permits after the designation. We'll have 1 year to compile and submit the application after the designation is approved. There is a priority for existing water users to get their permits first before any proposed new sources would be evaluated. We have no other source projects in Waianae because it's so dry. And we have a lot of installed capacity already, but having to cut back. These are the 7 criteria for the water use permits. Can they accommodate the use with available water sources? Is it reasonable and beneficial? Will it interfere with existing legal uses of water? Is it consistent with the public trust and with the state and county general plans and land use designations? And is consistent with those plans and policies? And will not interfere with the rights of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So the next slide is the regulatory implications. So again, we'll see what the water use permits will be, what we would be submitting. We would probably be submitting on existing use, but we'll see what the sustainable yields end up being. There are some large vacant urban zone parcels in Makaha. And until the sustainable yield situation is known, water availability will just have to depend on that. The commission may also amend issuing flow standards for Kaupuni Stream in Waianae, and that those effects on any permits in Waianae are unknown at this time. We are proactively discharging Waianae Plantation tunnel water back into Kaupuni Stream since 2012, and has restored the streams and Loikalo in the valley there. But the trade-off is lower drinking water supply in Mauka Waianae Valley, and they are large vacant DHHL tracts that will need domestic water. And to remind that DHHL is a public trust use, so they get high priority, plus they're domestic and they're DHHL, so they get double high priority versus like the streams in its natural state and water for traditional customer uses. Now, this is the plantation tunnels that we talked about back in 2021. It's the one on the right, tunnel 3, where we disconnected and discharging the tunnel water into the stream. What happened there is there is a boulder that collapsed in the front of the tunnel, and the Department of Health could not inspect the bulkhead, and that would have been a significant deficiency. So we had to cut it off. In the next slide, it's showing the actual discharge. So the pipeline right behind that valve there is cut off, and the tunnel's on the left, so it's discharging. And in 2012, so this is like a before and after photo of Kapuni Stream below one, just right above the boulder basin, right around the corner there. There's a line section of Kapuni that goes all the way to the ocean. So in 2012, it's dry like that. You can see an access road on the left. I'm going to call that about 5 feet high. it took about 7 years, but we created a lake there that actually submerged the access road. So DFM, they had a hard time, they couldn't access their water basin, so they thought we had a leak. So we investigated it. Whoa, man, it took 7 years for that discharge to actually fill up the stream and start flowing. So we did get it to flow all the way to the ocean. But subsequent to that, stream levels raised so that Kaala Farm now their lorry could get restored, and they started to divert water, and they could expand, and they expanded the lorry in their farm, and now it's dried up again. But at least there's an expansion of Loikal Inlet, and then the outreach. And Jonathan, I'm wondering if you could talk about the outreach that you did. Sure. Thank you. Lisa Moore.
Michael, Chair and members. My name is Jonathan Mikeke Schroyer. I have a small consulting firm, and I had the pleasure of working with the board on this. So in addition to preparing the petition, we prepared me and Dr. Bianchi Isaki, we prepared the petition after really extensive outreach to various elements in the community over a course of a couple years, ranging from governmental entities like the neighborhood boards, interested stakeholders like the Hawaiian Homes Commission and the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, as well as lots of different community groups, homesteader groups, have a special evening meeting for farmers to try and find out what their major concerns were about by relying on the previous version of the Board of Water Supply's Watershed Management Plan, as well as other historical and documentary sources. If you go to the next slide, we just have a brief summary. Talk to all of the elected officials who were in office at the time. There has been some recent turnover in some West Side officials, community and homestead organizations. We've presented at different community-driven water conferences. We've talked to the leadership of some different schools in the area, some business interests, Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation as well, who are large landowners in Makaha, who are transferring some of their lands to the community. We did speak with the U.S. Army. We made repeated outreach efforts to the U.S. Navy that were not successful.
Really?
What does that mean?
Meaning that we went through various efforts to talk to different contacts at the Navy, saying that we wanted to brief them on this effort because they take water from a particular spring at the back of Lualua Lake, but they never followed up.
I can try to get to the head of Navy Region Hawaii.
Okay. So that's the summary of our outreach efforts. Happy with Barry, of course, to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Sorry about the curve there. But the general response was that they're all supportive of the designation.
Yeah, once you show folks on the west side the map of Oahu with everything that's designated and the one driest and most Hawaiian area of the island not, they're like, why? We want that. We want our waters protected just as much as the rest of Oahu.
So if you can get me the information that you want for the outreach, I'll do the outreach to the Navy. Thank you. Thanks.
Members, questions, comments?
So what happens next? The thing was submitted in January. So
Yeah, so we just, Jonathan and I had a good discussion with the commission 2 weeks ago.
Last week.
This past week, they asked for an extension of time so that they could get formal comments from the mayor and the council and the Board of Water Supply. So they extended it to their March meeting, which then they would take it up if they receive the comments by then. If not, then they may go to April, but and then from there.
At that point, the chair of the commission, so who is currently also the chair of the Board of Land Natural Resources, Don Chang, makes a determination on whether or not they believe there's a factual basis sufficient for moving forward with designation. Kira Kahahane, the Water Commission deputy, orally indicated that she felt that there was a very robust factual basis that we've put forward, but they will do an analysis of that. They will, assuming then that Chair Chang recommends moving forward with the process, there will be a public hearing held somewhere in the community where people can testify on that. And then it will come back to the Commission on Water Resources Management, who has to, by a majority vote to designate. Then they notify it in the paper 3 times, and on the date of the third date, that starts the 1-year clock for the designation process for people to apply for existing water use permits.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you for your hard work. I have a couple of questions. Do you want to go back to the map? I think it was like page 6. Yeah, that's the one. And actually, there's another one that has the kind of the over under, or the what happens if there's less yield. How besides the tracking over time out of your shop, Barry, how does the greater regulatory bodies, whether it's CWRM, and I guess we're not a regulatory bodies, but we're tracking very carefully because we have to keep this symphony of balance going every month, right? But how do we, besides the rainfall, how do we actually change the sustainable yield number on a map like that to reflect what it is as our best guess at current and as it trends downward?
Yeah, sure. So the commission has, in their 2008 update of the sustainable yield, they did do it to an update of the Water Resource Protection Plan. They create a water professionals group that they outreach to, and that consists of hydrologists, geologists, and water managers, and folks that are interested in that. And they go over the actual methodology on how they calculate sustainable yield. And it's usually through a simple mathematical equation created by Dr. John Mink back in the day. And they use recharge numbers from the USGS. And it's primarily a historical trend. What was the rainfall like over the last decade? You know, is it going down? And then they adjusted accordingly. They did that in 2008, 2019. And, you know, when I started, the sustainable yield for the island was 495 million gallons per day. And then in the 90s, they dropped it to 465 when the sugar plantations closed. And we lost that recharge. And then I believe the next one was like 408, and now it's 393.5. So it's going down. And that's just because of the amount of recharge that they're seeing and the rainfall gauges, and it's just hotter. And so they'll do that again. They actually started it for Maui because they're working on the West Maui designation. We want to be part of that when they get to statewide. And how would they also be protective of the resource and also precautionary, what numbers they would do. What I heard was they now want to look forward and use some of these forecasts. The problem there is if you go to the previous slide.
You have hot, dry and wet.
These two models are done by the University of Hawaii, and I think Jonathan was in he facilitated one of these workshops on groundwater modeling. And what I got out of that, Jonathan, please jump in, that they're entrenched. Their methodology is the methodology, right? So I would like to see that these two forecasts start to converge towards something that's similar, but right now they're divergent. And so if you go too far into the future, you may just take the dry scenario, and that could really reduce sustainable yields in the state substantially. So it's how far do you look in the future? Which one of these models do you use? It starts to get complicated, and you need that's where the scientists come in and stuff. Did I get that? Anything to add there, John?
If I may, so the real simple version of the difference between statistical downscalers and dynamic downscalers are the statistical ones look at historic rainfall patterns and then projected in the future. The dynamic downscalers take those global climate models that are trying to predict global climate and downscale it in a dynamic computer model at the scale where it's meaningful to us in Hawaii. The global models, Hawaii looks like open ocean. We're so tiny compared to the models. The areas that they have converged so far are on the leeward sides of the islands. In almost all of the dynamic and statistical downscalings, it shows an end of century change for areas like Waianae that's just significantly drier. If,
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to just see a through line of what, if we, you know, when you started a little while ago was where it was, all the way down to, you know, below 400 now and trending downward. I mean, it just, you know, for me, right, it's like to watch this go by in terms of like the good work that Kathleen and them are doing in terms of like, they're gonna save more water, and then we have this affordable housing crisis that's kind of sandwiching us towards a, dare I say, increased need for water. And yet the sustainable yield is trending down, and then the access, right, which is the real problem here, is the access at the different points at which that symphony occurs gets tighter and tighter. Yeah.
I would just also add that, Barry, if you totaled up the low sustainable yield scenario, what is the island's total sustainable yield?
I remember a number of 38% less island-wide. I didn't really.
38% of 400 is
And I just did a quick math.
40 minus
It
400.
it looks like 300 million gallons for the island, but I could be off my math. Currently, it's at, if you go back to the other map, with the island sustainable yield at 393.5. So I remember when Pearl Harbor was the first area to get designated many years ago. The sustainable yield was much higher than what it is right now. And I've only seen the numbers actually go down over time.
Yeah, if you go to that other map, the 393 of that island-wide, the actual use is about 200. So there's areas where sustainable yield is not fully utilized.
Right.
But there are areas where it's right there.
Right.
So even if you drop it by one, like in Honolulu, if you drop it by one, we're because we have to, you know, that would affect our operations, right? And in Makaha Waianae as well.
Yeah. So like, probably Wahiawa, North, we're not fully utilizing yet.
That's correct.
Yeah. And also coincidentally, you know, where you place a new municipal landfill is very important because it could affect water quality for years to come. And so,
yeah. Please.
just for possible interest to the board, the other thing the Water Commission is now trying to actively consider is that the model used to calculate sustainable yield did not explicitly consider what are called groundwater dependent ecosystems. So the contribution of groundwater to stream flow and the way groundwater feeds the coastal wetlands, fish ponds, that was not part of the RAM model. And now, because communities around the state are taking care of fish ponds and wetlands, they're asking to make sure that there's Makai groundwater flow. They're also having to incorporate that, which will put a downward pressure on the amount of water that's available for extraction.
This is a Hay conversation.
The
other places,
yeah, plenty, but yeah.
You
You know, recognizing that each island has its own unique sets of challenges and surpluses and the like, and that each one geologically is a little bit different. I still want to be able to utilize like some of the lessons learned, like for instance in West Maui, where you've done a ton of work, right? And just understanding, you know, what's going on there, especially as we see, right, chlorides rise and how these calculations are made, and then the who owns the water or the movement of the water as a function of that is just, I think, really important for us to understand here. Because in some instances, right, I think it's a little bit of us getting to peer into the future of what may be on the plate as discussions maybe heat up as to how we're going to have to make choices here that they're on the cusp of having to make now, right? With the really large developments that are lush and green, and, you know, Lahaina being where Lahaina's at and the like.
Yeah, even more so the importance of conservation and being efficient in your water use, not to waste it, and also looking for alternative resources. right now we're 100% dependent for drinking water on groundwater resources, which then and writings on the wall, it will diminish over time as we try to meet all the needs for fresh water in our state.
One last question, there was that carve out about Makaha and just kind of how hard it is to get water all the way up there, and as well as like there are places that are zoned urban. So there's that new project that they're talking about with the old
Sheridan, the Makaha Resort to the.
It's the stuff that Mao's gonna try to work on now.
Yeah, so HRT was an order of a number of those large vacant urban parcels, and they donated it to Mao. And so I don't know all the specifics, but they are working, I understood they're working with US Fish and Wildlife to recover some of the vegetation there, the native plants, endangered species there. We certainly would be able to help that as well. But in terms of like a second golf course, one of the reasons why we asked for designation too is that the second golf course drilled a well. And under common law, they can pump it. Just got to get a permit for a pump. But we have all these sources there that we self-cut back because we're seeing declining water levels. So if it's designated, then they have to get a permit, and then they have to consider water supplies infrastructure and our needs as well. I don't think they need another golf course there. But until we know what the sustainable yields will be revised to, it's hard to confirm any water availability just in that Makaha area.
So has the Mao folks reached out? I mean,
We've briefed them early on in the process, and we actually notified everybody we talked to after the petition was filed, and one of their staff was like, hey, can we talk story again about this? We're meeting with them this week.
good, awesome. Any other questions, members?
Thank you. One follow-up on the, in the petition, under the uncertainties, we did take a dive into groundwater dependent ecosystems and the water flowing into the coast. So there's a percentage of recharge that doesn't show up in sustainable yield that's allowed to go to the coast. But where you put these sources, like you don't want to put, some of our existing sources were placed right at the heads of streams or springs and dried them out, basically.
Right.
So where you place these is important. So we try to avoid that and let the springs flow for traditional customer practices. There's other places that we could site our wells. So we did an analysis in that, so because we know that would come up. So we did our best to try to at least frame the discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Thank you for your time and attention on this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, don't go too far.
Okay, how?
All right, call Mike. So I know we got email from the CWRM requesting comments from the board about this petition. So do we normally send something like, Naalehu as chair on behalf of the board, or are we planning to comment, or should I not have asked that in here? That's like an exec sesh question.
No, that's fine. I think they send it to you folks individually. I saw individual emails. So board members, board chair members, if you want to respond individually, or if you want a kind of a whole of board response, we can help you with it.
Yeah, I actually didn't see the traffic go by. So Kehal, thanks for flagging. But I think we would probably want to try to do something all together as a board, and that takes into consideration the good work of Barry and Jonathan.
So we can assist in maybe drafting a response for the board's consideration, and the board can individually or as a group, decide how you want to respond.
Okay, does that sound okay for you?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
March 7th is the deadline, FYI.
Okay, gotta be quick.
The the water code is written in a way that any petition for designation, which can be filed by a community group or another body, requires consultation with the mayor, the Board of Water Supply, and the county council for the respective county. This is the first time that it's been the Board of Water Supply that's actually been the petitioner, so there's not a special provision that says, by the way, you know, if it's the board petitioning, you don't gotta talk to them. So that's what generated that letter.
Yeah, I know, it's been a while since we've been designated, so I didn't remember that. But thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
We'll work on a draft for you.
Okay, yeah, we'll get Joy to circulate it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Moving on to item number 5, number 6, status of groundwater levels at all index stations. Chair recognizes Barry Usagawa. Hello, Barry.
Thank you, Chair and members. 3 aquifer index stations in low groundwater for January 2025. Wailua is in caution, Kaimuki and Punaluu are in alert. The production in January went down by about 5 million gallons to 132. I think December was 137. The rainfall index for the month of January is 190. We got some big storms, but they're short, but intense. The 5-month moving average went up to 89%. Still, drought monitors still abnormally dry around Oahu, especially leeward. And the index head levels are stable for January. And you know, it's this combination of slightly still higher production in January versus the previous year, January, and the 5-year monthly average. So the 190% or normal rainfall in January, a lot of that ran off, but it was good, you know, that they got some of that got into the aquifer. And then the pumpage, you can see on the far right in green, that was December at 137, much higher than usual. And it came down a bit in the light blue on the left at 132, but we're still above the 5-month moving average and where we were in January of 2024. That's my report, and we'll continue to monitor indices.
Is there any questions? Yeah, Barry, thank you. Thank you for the hard work.
Yes.
Wayne, thank you for your patience. Moving on to number 7, water main repair report for January 2025. Chair recognizes Wayne Tello. Hello, Wayne.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and members. Wayne Tello, Acting Program Administrator of Field Operations. I have the water main and leak detection reports for the month of January. We had 28 main breaks, 14 were leaks, 13 was break, and 1 damaged by contractor. For leak detection, we had 59 points of interest. We found 29 leaks, 1 main leak, 23 meter cupping leaks, 4 leaks on customer's property, and 1 service leak. That's my report. Any questions?
Was there any questions? You know, you mentioned the one that was done by a contractor. In those instances, would you guys just go and fix it and then you just bill them later for the water and the overtime?
Yes, on the damage, very sensitive at the end.
It's
We'll find it.
against.
Yeah.
Okay. You can measure how much water they use up?
No, not
You gotta kind of guess. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne.
Okay.
And we won't name the contract.
Wasn't intending to. This is the end of our regular meeting, and we do have executive session. So is there a motion to take a 10-minute break while staff sets up for executive session?
Again.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Let's take a 7-minute break. Thank you. So we're in regular session. Are we back on? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, John.
Second.
Seconded by Lance, moved by John. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, we adjourn.